At some point in the last decade, a strange belief quietly spread through modern culture, the belief that every life must have a mission. Not just goals, not just interests, but a single defining purpose, a grand narrative that explains why you exist and what you are meant to accomplish. You see it everywhere. Advice videos telling you to discover your calling, books promising to help you unlock your purpose, podcasts insisting that once you find the thing you were meant to do, everything in life will suddenly align. Work will feel meaningful, motivation will become effortless, your path will become clear. But there's a problem hiding inside this idea. It turns life into a project, a long optimization process where every decision must justify itself by moving you closer to your ultimate purpose. Free time becomes suspicious, hobbies feel unproductive, rest feels like wasted potential. And slowly, something subtle happens. You stop living your life and start managing it. Every activity becomes part of a strategy. Every interest must be evaluated for its usefulness. Even curiosity begins to feel like something that needs justification. The strange irony is that this mindset is often presented as liberating. Find your purpose, people say, and you will feel free. But for many people, the opposite happens. The search for purpose becomes exhausting. Because instead of enjoying what they are doing right now, they feel pressure to constantly evaluate whether they are doing the right thing. And if they're not sure what their purpose is yet, every day begins to feel like a mistake. The philosopher Byung-Chul Han describes modern society as something he calls the burnout society. In the past, people were controlled by external rules, clear expectations, clear limits, authority telling you what to do. But modern culture operates differently. Instead of being controlled from the outside, we begin controlling ourselves from the inside. We become our own supervisors, our own critics, our own taskmasters. We constantly ask ourselves questions like, am I doing enough? Am I living up to my potential? Am I wasting my life? And the idea of purpose often becomes the perfect tool for this internal pressure. Because purpose sounds noble, it sounds inspiring, but it also quietly demands constant productivity. If your life has a mission, then every moment that isn't contributing to that mission feels like failure. Suddenly, your identity becomes tightly connected to what you produce. You are not just someone who writes, you are a writer. You are not just someone who builds businesses, you are an entrepreneur. You are not just someone who enjoys psychology, you are someone who must build a career around it. And the stronger that identity becomes, the harder it is to change direction, because leaving the path begins to feel like losing yourself. This is the paradox. Purpose is supposed to give your life meaning, but when your identity becomes trapped inside that purpose, your freedom begins to shrink. You feel less able to explore, less able to experiment, less able to change your mind. Your life becomes narrower, more defined, more rigid, and the thing that was supposed to liberate you becomes a cage built from your own expectations. There is another problem with the modern obsession with purpose. It assumes that meaning must always be intense, powerful, transformative, something big, something dramatic, something that justifies your existence in a profound way. But human psychology doesn't operate well under constant intensity. Even the most meaningful experiences eventually become exhausting if they are pursued without pause. This is why many people experience something that could be called a purpose hangover. They spend years chasing meaning, building projects, pushing themselves to achieve something significant, trying to turn their passion into a career, trying to turn their interests into impact, trying to turn their lives into something important. At first, the energy feels incredible. There is excitement, momentum, a sense of direction. But over time, the pressure begins to accumulate. Every project becomes important. Every decision feels heavy. Every mistake feels like a threat to your entire identity. And slowly, the thing that once felt meaningful begins to feel like an obligation. You no longer do it because you want to, you do it because it has become who you are. This is why many people who successfully turn their passion into their career eventually experience burnout, not because the activity itself changed, but because the psychological relationship to it changed. Something that once felt playful becomes serious. Something that once felt voluntary becomes necessary. And the constant demand for meaning begins to drain the joy that originally created that meaning. The irony is that the search for purpose can slowly destroy the very curiosity that made life feel meaningful in the first place. Writer Oliver Burkeman offers an interesting perspective on this problem. In his book, 4,000 Weeks, he points out something simple but powerful. The average human life contains roughly 4,000 weeks. That's it. Which means that no matter how productive you are, no matter how optimized your systems become, you will never have enough time to do everything that feels meaningful. Life will always be incomplete. There will always be unfinished ideas, unexplored paths, unrealized possibilities. Instead of treating this as a failure, Burkeman suggests something radical. Accept it. Accept that life cannot be perfectly optimized. Accept that you will never fully solve the question of purpose. And instead of organizing your life vertically around one central mission, begin living horizontally. Horizontal living means allowing different interests, experiences, and curiosities to coexist without forcing them into a single narrative. You can write because writing is interesting, learn psychology because it fascinates you, explore ideas because they stimulate your mind, not because they must contribute to a final purpose, but because they enrich the moment you are living. This approach removes a huge amount of psychological pressure. You are no longer required to justify every interest by turning it into a career. You are no longer required to monetize every skill. You are no longer required to transform every passion into productivity. Some things can simply exist because they are enjoyable. And ironically, when the pressure disappears, creativity often returns. Because curiosity thrives in environments where it is not constantly evaluated. One of the most overlooked sources of fulfillment is something extremely simple: attention. Not attention in the sense of visibility, but attention in the sense of presence. The ability to fully experience what you are doing without constantly evaluating its importance. Many people struggle with this because they are mentally living in the future. They are thinking about outcomes, about goals, about whether the current moment is useful enough. But when life becomes purely instrumental, when every action is just a step toward something else, the present moment begins to feel empty. You are always preparing for life, but never actually living it. Radical presence means reversing that pattern. Instead of asking, "Is this contributing to my purpose?" you ask something simpler: "Is this meaningful right now?" Meaning doesn't always come from grand achievements. Sometimes it comes from attention itself, a conversation, a creative experiment, learning something without needing to use it. Moments that have value not because they lead somewhere, but because they exist. There is a strange freedom that appears when you stop demanding that your life have a perfectly defined purpose. You begin to realize something important. Meaning is not something you discover once and then follow forever. It is something that appears repeatedly in different forms throughout your life. Different interests, different seasons, different curiosities. different projects, and each of them can matter without needing to become your permanent identity. When life becomes less about fulfilling a mission, it becomes more like exploration, less like work, more like play. And play has a unique psychological quality. It creates energy instead of draining it, which means the paradox may be this: the more desperately you try to find your purpose, the more exhausted you become. But the moment you loosen that pressure, meaning quietly begins to appear again, not as a destination, but as something woven into the experience of living itself.